take James. He's so frustrated with his physique. He buys into this whole YouTube hype and he fantasizes about the dream physique. Something aesthetic like Andrew Eubanks or... I don't know, Hormozy. I don't even know any of these people anymore, to be honest. But his reality is far from him. Now picture Anatoly. This guy is shredded to the bone, if that's an expression. And he's disciplined. He can eat a burger and he'll still wake up the next day looking like a Greek god because he has the right principles. I don't have the time or the energy or the motivation. I know motivation, you should be disciplined, but I do not have any of that to actually cook a meal. As simple as that is. I'm also bulking, so it's kind of, has to be more calories. I don't want to spend the next few hours eating after spending ages cooking, and then, I've got work. So what do? Every single day I get a pizza. Literally, this went on for like months. Every single day I'd get like one of those huge pizzas. I'd feel sick eating it, and I'd do it because I had to. I had goals to meet, and I had to keep those going. And who knows, maybe this contributed to me feeling tired. Maybe this is why I felt so bad. Maybe this exacerbated my acid reflux, but it was not good. It got to a point where, I'd always have to have pepperoni because it has to have protein. But it got to a point where every single time I had like a tiny bit of like the pepperoni slice, I felt sick. And sometimes like struggling to eat the last slice would give me like the shakes. It would give me like mini little like spasms just because of how difficult it was to put this into my body. It was really not fun. And then after that, I would kind of feel gross and icky the entire day. I'd go to the gym and it just wouldn't feel the same. Like the workout, there'd be something like wrong, something rotten about it. Eating pizza was not good. And this went on for way too long. I mean, there were days where I'd have more than one pizza in a day. Like, this is not really a good lifestyle. So I want to give you one of the most important actionable steps I think I've ever actually given when it comes to staying disciplined on your diet. I want you to, like I say always, open up your notes app, open up a document, get a pen and paper, whatever. And I want you to write down everything you ate today. And we're going to talk a little bit later about why this step is so important. You see, when people are trying to look good, what do? Well, it's obviously the calorie deficit, because that's going to make you leaner, that's going to make you more defined, that's going to make you more toned. But where's the potential for growth? See, I will admit, in an aggressive cut, when we're training properly, when we're training to failure, when we're training super, super hard, when we're not overtraining and the recovery's in place, yes, we can gain a bit of muscle when we're going down there. But when people think of this aesthetic physique, when people think of Anatoly, what they're actually thinking about is someone who has had like a surplus duration of 5 years spanning across a long time to at least get somewhere close to that. And they don't get here by just aimlessly eating food, by going, oh, maybe this is enough, maybe this isn't, I'm going to eat just a little bit less, just a little bit more. They know their TDEE, which is literally just total daily energy expenditure. It is the amount your body burns to sustain you. And on top of that, do daily activities. So it's not like if we spend the entire day in bed, it's going to be the same as a day of running, because obviously TDEE encompasses the running as part of it. It's not your basal metabolic rate, something called BMR, which is literally just if you did nothing, what it takes to sustain your body. And that's something that sometimes people mistakenly use. And it's also why a lot of these calorie calculators are wrong, because imagine you go onto this website, this calorie calculator, and you're trying to work out how much you eat. And then those calorie calculators will basically take what your basal metabolic rate should be based on your height and weight. So they don't actually know about your muscle mass, and muscle mass will change the sort of basic, metabolism you've got going on, how many calories you're burning to sustain the muscle mass. But not only does it do that, it also doesn't account for like small variations between people's, basic BMR, because it will vary. It can go as far as like 400 plus and minus, just because it happens. And this is probably why people believe that they're hard gainers or whatever. But I'd like to believe that a majority of the case is just because they're not eating enough, or they're eating like too much volume and it's too low calorie or something like that. But the thing here is those calculators not only don't account for that variance, but they don't account for daily expenditure on top of that. So like the amount you're walking, the amount you're working out, the amount of cardio you do, and it will give you some levels of daily activity you can follow, but the result you get will still not be that great. So when it tells you, oh, you burn 3,000 a day, that is an estimate. It literally doesn't know. It has no clue how much you're actually burning in a day. And so when people try and follow that metric and they don't gain weight or they lose weight or like something weird happens, and they get so confused because they don't actually know their TDEE. They know a calculator's guess, an estimate. So if you want to be doing deficits, if you want to be doing surpluses, if you want to build muscle and get leaner and also have like a sort of cycle where you're not exceeding the healthy range and then cutting back and then aggressively cutting back hopefully, and then having a prolonged time to put back on mass and build new tissue, then you got to know your TDEE. It's such an important thing. You can have people who believe that, oh, we can just gain as much as we want because we're going to lose it anyway. Fat's easier to lose than muscle. That's true. It's much, much easier to lose fat than muscle, or than gain muscle. But a small thing people forget is it doesn't mean we should put on as much fat as possible just because we're going to lose it. Not only does having a higher body fat reduce our potential for muscle gain, because more of it will end up actually going towards fat past a certain body fat, but the amount of extra muscle mass you're actually gaining isn't enough. Like, it's not enough to merit it, especially because you're going to have to spend X amount of time longer just losing the body fat, which also gives an amount of time longer where you're actually in a state which can promote atrophy of your muscles, which isn't great either because you don't want to lose all your gains you've just spent ages gaining. And the thing about some of these guys too, which you have to understand, is when someone just starts out, when someone's like James and they're confused why they're not getting shredded, they're not just hitting the gym, okay? Guys like Anatoly have not only more calories burnt just by having the muscle, but they're typically more active. Like, they'll walk around, they'll have healthy habits which promote further calorie expenditure on top of that. They've been in it for a while, and they understand the sort of benefits of something like cardio. So even though it will put their metabolism up a bit, they will be doing that and it'll be like natural to them. And the thing here is, yes, they are building up this appetite over years and years and years when they're training their body to be able to be comfortable with eating more. But when they need to start cutting down, it's not difficult. Not only have they done it many, many times before, and they're experienced and they know what to expect and there's no sort of surprises, but they need to have more calories than someone who's just starting to lose the same amount of weight. So it's actually not as hard for them to get shredded. And so when some people get in and they're like, oh, I can't get shredded, do these guys do it so quickly? How do these bodybuilders manage to effortlessly cut down for a bodybuilding show? It's because they're just burning more. And it's very, very easy to have a sustainable cut when you just burn more naturally. Like, come on, guys. These guys not only have that though, they have metabolic adaptations, because the prolonged bulk does mean that they will just naturally their body will start to speed up basically. And so when they do start instantly cutting, there's going to be a period where the metabolic adaptation has to sort of catch up. So it's like you've been bulky for so long that your body speeds up certain things. It makes you jitter more, it makes you fidget more, or it makes you just be more inclined to do active things because you're getting so much more energy. And for maybe a month or so when you first do your cut, those things will be slowly going down. But if you don't have those things naturally because you haven't had those metabolic adaptations, you're going to not really have that sort of additional benefit at first. You're not going to be fidgeting a lot. You're just going to end up going to the part where you're like barely fidgeting, where you're just like a corpse and you're just lifeless and you're just moving around things. But you also have to realize that the meal choices are very important. You see, someone who's been disciplined with their diet for years and years and years won't give in to cravings, because not only have they had many cuts before where they've only been eating like chicken, broccoli and rice, the stereotype, but even when bulking, they understand the importance of being clean. And sure, they may have the occasional meal out and they may like splurge on their allotted calories, but for the most part, they're being very, very careful with what they eat because they understand how important their health is. And so when someone who hasn't gone through that for that amount of time, it's not really their fault. Like, they they still love junk food, and they still have it so frequent where when they try and eliminate that sort of thing, they end up getting stuck in this cycle of literally, I mean, I've seen some really bad things. There's a guy I know, and he will like starve for a few days, and then he'll end up going to KFC and getting so much food, like 6,000 calories, just because he's been too restrictive, and he hasn't actually got over the addiction yet. Like, if you have some sort of food addiction, you need to get rid of that. You need to be like disciplined with some sort of clean diet before you can restrict your calories. Because if you restrict your calories just like that, when you still have that food addiction and that isn't dealt with, like, not like it doesn't get anywhere. Because not only are you giving in, well, you end up giving into the cravings, but those cravings are gonna be so much enhanced by cutting. Like, when you're cutting, you start craving things you didn't even know you wanted to have. And imagine you're already craving something because you haven't even gotten over that addiction yet. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's also why all I want recently is just Krispy Kreme donuts. Like, I could, if someone gave me a dozen, I would genuinely eat it all. Like, I don't think I'd be able to handle that, because it's the one thing I want so consistently, to the point where, like, sometimes I'll go to the store and I'll get like the box of Krispy Kreme donuts and I'll like smell it. It sounds so bad, but I'll like smell it because for whatever reason I want it so badly, and the smell alone is enough for me. Or like watching videos of someone eating like Krispy Kreme, I don't know, I really want it, but I just can't. You know, I have to be disciplined. And if it was my last cut, I'll be real, I would have got the entire box and I would have eaten all of them. And then I would have cut back on the protein and cut back on like other things, because I'd done that, and then I would end up making barely any progress and losing a ton of muscle. But that's old me. I'm not doing that sort of thing anymore. I'm really sticking to things. And then a lot of the time too, people are genetically blessed. Let me tell you my genetic gift. And it's something where if people have this, they're very, very lucky. You see, my genetic gift is I don't really get hungry. Like, yeah, sometimes in the car I get super hungry, but I've gone for periods where I just don't eat because I forget, and there's no real hunger. If the hunger's there, it's like, it's whatever, you know, I'm busy, or like I've got something to do. It doesn't really affect me, and that means when I'm cutting, the sort of hunger levels that pop up are irrelevant. Like, I just look at it, I'm like, okay, it's just like a random feeling in my tummy. Like, why would I care about that? But some guys do not have these sort of genetic adaptations. Like, you've seen photos of David Lade, I assume, before he started, and a lot of other guys before they started, who like remain lean quite consistently, and they always start off lean. The reason for this is because their like natural genetic kind of baseline is in a lean state. So when they get to a lean state, it's not going to be as difficult as it is for a guy who has never been lean in his life, like who's consistently been a bit on the fluffier end, because that's just how their bodies kind of stayed. And so these genetics do make a difference. I'm not saying it's game over. I'm not saying you can't be lean for some sort of consistent amount of time if you really, really try, but it will be a little bit harder. Although this isn't a bad thing. You know, some of these guys who are genetically lean and their body's predisposed, I think, to being lean, they do struggle to bulk up a bit higher. And so imagine you're trying to go bear mode, you're trying to maximize your bulk, you're trying to go as long as possible and get up to the kind of the little bit before it becomes unhealthy, and you're huge. Like, they're not getting there. They really struggle. And not only that, but some of the people like David Lade or, you know, Alex Eubank, who have consistently done that, it become a thing where their audience see them be lean year round, and they know the leaner they are, the crazier they look. The crazier they look, the more engagement they get, the more views they get, the more money they get. It becomes very financially incentive to remain in that sort of state. And so even when they do try and pushing past the sort of genetics and getting higher, it results in them actually receiving less of the sort of stuff that validates them and keeps them going. So do you really think they're going to commit to it too? Like, no, it's genetics can be a curse, they can be a blessing. Like, I have a really good one, considering hunger isn't the same as lean. So that means I can get up to the really high points and I can get down to the really low points, and hunger will just not faze me. So that's a good thing for me. I'm sure everyone has their sort of, you know, genetic gift. The only way you've got like some sort of genetic, I mean, even if you believe you have a genetic curse, I guarantee you can spin it in some sort of positive way. Like, if you believe that you're cursed because you're super fat, Imagine how long and how consistent and how effortless it's going to be to bulk when you get to a really lean state. Like, you're not going to struggle with eating food because you'll become really good at eating food, and it may have been a bad thing, but in the future that's not going to be a bad thing anymore. So, you know, genetics are a very double-edged sword. Every bad thing will have a good thing attached. it's just how it works. But another of these problems which contribute to this sort of like mentality, which really damages young men when they're trying to build a physique in the gym, and honestly it ends up putting them off a lot of the time. Like, I've seen so many people end up just stopping because they've seen someone who is like perceived as shredded, and the guy eats a pizza, right? I think Kino Body does this. I don't know if that's the right guy's name, but they'll see someone who's absolutely insane eating junk food, and it'll be just for the video. I'm going to be completely honest with you. These guys only do it for the video. Like, off screen, they're not eating that way. I don't know if you've seen Sam Sulek's recent full day of eating, but he had like a gallon of chocolate milk and then he had like an entire box of cereal with some milk, like a couple cups of milk, and then he had like Burger King, and then he had like some Krispy Kreme donuts. And you watch this and you're like, wow, this is how this guy eats. He's probably put that on for show. Like, if he's eating that every single day, I'd be very concerned, but I don't think he is. I think that's something where he knows people are going to be interested. And so, yeah, when you have these sort of extra 10,000 calorie diet, have you seen how many views they get when they're doing like a challenge of like 10,000 calories, and they don't even have to reach it? Like, the fact that they're going for it is big enough. You know, people want to see people cheating on their diets and having the physique, because the people who don't have the physique need to feel like they can cheat on their diet. But these guys, you have to understand, these guys who are actually pretty lean and pretty big, the ones who aren't on steroids, which is a large majority of them, I'm going to be confused, especially if they're maintaining a lean physique year round. That is so difficult to do unless you're using some sort of steroids, or unless you're like doing 2x the content as you go along, and then when you're bulking you like throw out old content. I'm pretty sure there are some people who do that because they know like the benefit of being seen as lean year round. But a lot of these guys have such misleading images. Like, I saw there's a really well-known photo, and it's David Lade, and he's like pumped, and the downlighting's perfect, and he's doing like this pose, and he looks absolutely huge. And then it's contrasted to, it's actually on my Instagram actually, because I put a video up on it, but it's contrasted to this like fan meeting him, and he looks super tiny in this t-shirt, and the fan looks so disappointed, just because every single image these guys take is absolutely crafted perfectly to maximize that. Like, they take pump pre-workout to look bigger, they do the downlighting to look bigger, they have a special exposure setting, a special camera lens. Like, everything is put together in a way which not only is very difficult to replicate. Like, when I go to the gym, I do not look that impressive because I do not know all the tricks, and even the slight ones I do don't work well enough, where like I know there are guys who are smaller than me but will be perceived as bigger just because they know how to like do the right zoom in or the right exposure, or maybe they have like some sort of curvature to the lens which adds some sort of thing. But you have to understand, like, this sort of stuff is at play, so please do not be dissuaded, but please do not fall into the trap of thinking that you can eat what you want, because you can't. It's just the sad truth. But there is also a kind of stagnation that comes from this. Imagine someone who actually does this regularly, like they're consistently eating junk food for the audience, to kind of convince the audience that you can eat junk food and get the physique, because that's how they get their views and engagement. But they're also not able to bulk because they need to look lean for the views and the engagement. They actually stagnate. Like, before this, they've spent 5 years, 6 years building up to that physique, but now they're going to make zero progress, or they're going to slightly decline, because there's no dietary discipline. They're not actually in like a sort of anabolic environment where they're continuously gaining muscle. They're just floating at this one point, this one like snippet. And some of the naturals out there are a few natural based channels like, you know, Alex Leonidas, Jeffrey Verity Schofield, you know, Natural Hypertrophy, like a bunch of guys who are actually committing to bulks and cuts, and their audience view it, and their audience are in a sort of crowd where they're okay with it. They don't care that someone isn't lean year round, because Although the views may get up like 10% more, the majority of the audience is there for the advice that is coming from these guys. And the thing here is, these natural lifters who are following these guys and learning a lot more about how you don't have to be lean like year round, they will end up getting to a level above the current kind of like face of natural fitness. The guys who are eating pizzas all day long, junk food all day long, and aren't committing to bulks. And when this happens, we're going to get a few things. Either it's going to be blown out of the water and no one will believe that they're natural, or we'll get new natural people who stagnate their progress for views. I guarantee that will happen. It's a really awful cycle, and there's no real way around it, because a lot of people who watch these guys don't actually watch them because they go to the gym. They watch them because it's impressive, and you can't handle a sort of audience based on things being impressive when someone doesn't understand things like bulks and cuts and just thinks someone who's bulked up looks worse because they're not as defined. And it's very difficult, and I went through that sort of thing. Like I didn't listen to anyone, and I was like, okay, we're gonna have a long sacrifice for long-term gains. I'm not gonna sacrifice my quick results. I'm not gonna do any of that. And I literally bulked up. I bulked up beyond what I should have even bulked up to. But that was kind of because I had an injury before, and I like bounced a bunch of fat back on, and I just really wanted to keep going and keep pushing and stay disciplined with it until, you know, the health. Well, I say that, but the health effects were there for a while before I realized, okay, we'll start cutting. But no one will do that. Like, genuinely no one will do that. And many people are scared of losing abs. And that's not even when a bulk's supposed to stop. So I think that puts into contrast how awful it is. Like, if you bulk till the abs are gone, and so the abs are almost gone, and then you cut down, and then you keep doing that, there's going to be no growth. There's going to be no real progress. There's a mentality which needs to be fixed here. And the selective reality does not help. The fact that you will never see these guys without a pump, without the proper lighting, is... I mean, why do you think they look so impressive? Like, if gods could sneeze and they hid their sneezes, then no one... I don't know, what was the analogy I was trying to make there? You see them sneeze and you get confused? Like, why have they got a cold? I don't know, man. I don't know what I was trying to say. But here is a very good full plan of action. I love these. So step 1 is work out your actual TDEE. And I do not mean this in the sense of you go to the calculator. That can be a good estimate, but I want you to consistently track your weight and consistently track your food so that you're able to put them next to each other and you're actually able to work out the exact TDEE you have, because when you're bulking, when you're cutting, that is important to know. And yes, it will change over time, which is why you can continuously extrapolate the data. 2 weeks worth is a really good sort of metric to use, or time frame to use. Step 2 is, if you're trying to lean down, and even if you're not trying to lean down, increase your daily activity. Get more steps in, get more movement, have some actually outside the gym exercise, do some cardio. Like, these things not only are going to help you get leaner with like eating more, like you can eat more or like you can eat less, who cares, but not only will it do that for you, but when you bulk up, it will help you maintain better heart health. It will help you continue going up without building a ton of like visceral fat. Like, it will be very good for your health is what I'm saying here. Step 3 is another of these assess steps. I love these. So assess your diet. Take a look at what you're eating. We took that list earlier, and take a look at it and realize that a lot of this is junk food. And some of this junk food, you may even have the belief that you can have it because you've seen someone else have it. Maybe you're having something like, I don't know, Sour Patch Kids. And unless that's intra-workout, you don't need it. And actually, if it is intra-workout, work out if you actually need it intra-workout. Because a lot of people will do intra-workout stuff and they don't even need it. Like, they still have the exact same energy levels. And so it's just like an excuse to get some sweets in, which isn't that great. So just make sure that you're strategically picking your foods. It doesn't mean that you can't have a little bit of junk food there, a little bit of sweets, the occasional eating out with friends, but it does mean that you should always aim to be better. Now, step 4 is just understand the reality check. Like, understand that most guys do not look as good as social media says. And a lot of these guys too are fake naturals, and the ones who aren't are photoshopping their photos, and the ones who aren't are only taking photos with the perfect pump with the perfect downlighting. So you can understand why there's so many things here which make it so unreliable. Like you're practically going onto Reddit, and there are guys who like make up stories, and you're like believing the story word for word, and you're like, wow, I'm such a loser, my life sucks. This person managed to like marry a super famous businesswoman, and he didn't even work out. He just walked down the road one day, and he's actually 300 pounds, and he bumped into her, and she was like, whoa, you're my soulmate. And then we got like, you cannot believe these Reddit stories, you cannot believe these images. It's just, think for a second about this stuff. And I mean, why would you not want your photo to be as good as possible? Because not only people are going to see it, and there's validation, and there's status, and there's ego attached to it, but you're making more money, especially at these levels of like influence. And step 5 is, whatever you do, just be committed to it in the long term. This is a multi-year process. This isn't just getting, ripped in 6 months and then you maintain and you don't have to do much work. Like, this is something you're continuously improving. And it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of consistency and a lot of discipline, but that's something that will carry over into the other areas of your life. So it's pretty good, man. I don't know if you ever had like a sort of wake up call or like a aha moment on anything I said, but we need to work together to redefine what it actually takes to be successful and to be disciplined. So let's try and elevate each other. If there's anything you have, like any thoughts or ideas, literally throw them in the comments. If there's anything else you think contribute to this sort of thing, tell me, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you have anyone who is stuck in this sort of cycle of like they're 6 months into the gym and they're cutting, please send them this video.